All right. Cool. I think we're live. This would be the first episode of Misinformation, live from a studio apartment. This is Misinformation. This is going to be kind of crappy, just to give you guys a heads up. So, more of a test, just kind of testing stuff out, seeing how it looks, the lighting and stuff like that. So if anyone does watch this and you have any feedback, feel free to give it to me, and I'm going to be testing out, the software and see how it works. I don't know how the chat works either. So, I think there's like a button for it, but damn, I really should have looked at that ahead of time. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Show docs. Chat. I'm just going to click chat button. Okay. So I've got some... Whoa, shit. Okay. Alright, perfect. I've got some type of a chat going on. Let me find it. Okay, don't know where it went. Let me go back to this. That's what we need. Dear Lord. Off to a great start. Okay. So we'll move this to this screen. Alright, so if anyone does show up, you can chat. I should be able to see you. So, I'm going to start off with kind of a recap of the news, and we got some jokes. So, alright, first up. Trump declared that he's gonna ban mail-in voting ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Yeah, in response, Democrats said, "Over our dead bodies." It's they vote with dead people. That's the point of that. Bed Bath & Beyond has announced that it's not going to put any more of its stores in California. It's going to move beyond California. Yeah, which is a shame because California is already experiencing a shortage of both beds and bathrooms. Brutal. Just brutal. Let's see what's up. Trump is apparently he's pushing for, I guess it's like someone in the Federal Reserve. I've never heard of her before, Lisa Cook, to resign because there's allegations that she's been participating in mortgage fraud. This on the heels of Letitia James and Adam Schiff, similar allegations. Yeah, so on the bright side, Democrats finally have solved that housing crisis that they've been working so hard on. Yeah, it turns out they just need to get rid of Democrats. Yeah, they've been stealing all the homes. The Cracker Barrel announced that it's going to... This is so crappy. Just made me laugh for a second. The Cracker Barrel just announced that it's going to be redoing its logo. Yeah, they're getting rid of the Cracker Barrel dude. And everyone online is in an uproar about it. Which just goes to show you can take the cracker out of the old country, but you can never take the old country out of the cracker. I've also got this visual. It's Aunt Jemima saying, "They got my ass too, cracker." Yeah, so we got that. UFC fight. There was a big UFC fight this past weekend. Khamzat Chimaev. For anyone that saw it, I'm sorry. It was like 29 minutes of Khamzat basically laying on top of another man. It was a historic victory for Khamzat, though. Yeah. It was the first time that a fighter has slept the entire crowd. The entire crowd. Okay, so those are the jokes. And then what do we got here? Stuff to talk about, I guess. No one in the chat so far. Good news, probably. Okay, what do we got? Trump's been tweeting, He tweeted about the Smithsonian museums throughout Washington, but all over the country are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian's out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. He's essentially saying he's going to direct his attorneys to try and get the Smithsonian, other museums to, I guess, promote strong American values and like a brighter American future, which for the most part I tend to agree with. It's basically on the one hand, like I like the museums showing the stuff about our past and our history. There's like the Museum of Tolerance. I remember when I was a kid was like a big thing to see. I think it's in Los Angeles. It just reminds you of your past, But at the same time, I mean, so all the Democrats basically came out when he said this, and they kind of, you could see that they all had new messaging because it was all kind of in lockstep. Slavery was bad. Slavery was bad. For anyone that's confused, slavery is bad. So that's the whole Democrat message, Basically, anytime that Trump says something's gone too woke and we need to correct the steering wheel, Democrats just go with, well, you're a racist. So here the messaging is slavery was bad. The key word for me here is was, right? We all understand that slavery was bad. The point that I think Trump's trying to make, and everyone who wants to move beyond it is trying to make, is that that's in our past, like way back in our past. That's a part of our history, but we don't need to dwell on it. We don't need to dwell on it forever, and it's time to move past that ultimately and to talk about a brighter future for our country. So I tend to agree with him. I think that museums do need to have some references to it, obviously, and but I think the key for me is just counterbalancing any references to that with the current day reality and where we've come and how far we've come, and basically creating a positive image for people of the future of America, essentially. So those are my thoughts on that. You have to forgive me. I'm using this, it's like OBS software or something, so I'm trying to figure it all out as I kind of go here. But we're having some fun. Okay. So we got that. Oh, one thing I can do, I think, is log on to like Twitter. Hold on, with like a screen capture thing. So we're just basically going to go through some tweets that I have bookmarked and look at them, and might be some commentary on it, I guess. I don't know if this sound will play though. Let's see. Already messed it up. Hold on. So if we go here, this is Stephen Miller. He's talking about the Democrat Party, and I think he's making the case that they're essentially a criminal organization. So let's see.
The Democrat Party is an extremist organization, Sean. It's not a political party in any normal sense of the word. A political party represents Americans. It represents law-abiding citizens. All you see all day long are crazy Democrats screeching on TV on behalf of foreign terrorists, hardened criminals, and violent illegal aliens. A political party exclusively dedicated to protecting terrorists, criminals, gangbangers, and murderers. That's what they become. These sanctuary city mayors, DOJ's been very clear. They had a deadline and they violated it. They had a deadline to comply with federal law and hand over the criminal illegal aliens in their custody, the child rapists, the child predators, the drug traffickers, the human traffickers. The sanctuary cities, like Boston, refused to turn over these menacing threats to public safety. And so now they face not only revocation of funds, not only the loss of taxpayer support, but also potential criminal charges for harboring and smuggling. This is as real as it gets, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, he's making some points that are related to something. We're going to have to scroll through some random tweets here too. But this is sort of related to me. Did you guys see this? There was, I guess, a guy was pulled over in D.C., gets out of the car. They probably has to see his driver's license. He tries to bolt, and he gets taken down. He's freaking out, right? But before you feel too sorry for him, it later came out, I guess he's an illegal immigrant and he's accused of something like assault on a minor. I don't think it was sexual assault. I think it was just actual assault on a minor. I just saw another tweet related to it. So I was taking a look at this, and then there's also that story about the immigrant truck driver who was, I guess, making an illegal U-turn, wasn't supposed to be in the country, and ended up, as he's making the U-turn illegally, another car, I guess, doesn't see him turning, runs into it, kills 3 people, right? So yeah, I didn't actually want to bring these things up because I don't know that it's necessarily fair to categorize every immigrant, even an illegal immigrant, as like a danger to society or a criminal or someone who's going to assault children or anything, right? However, it seems like every time there is a story in the news about something like this, it turns out that the guy is an illegal immigrant with like an arrest record. So it's just not looking good, the recent news for the Democrats, with the people that were let into the country do end up having prior records. They are causing some real mayhem. And to me, when you look at the Democrat Party, I guess this is sort of a separate point, but to me they seem like an extremist organization. You have it reminds me almost of like the Weather Underground, which was there a while back. I think they were like bombing clinics and stuff like that. So when you talk about the Democrats now, it seems like whenever they don't get their way, they're either going to burn down a city, they're going to support somebody who murders someone. You had when Luigi Mangione happened and killed the United Healthcare CEO. I didn't see any Democrats coming out against that. They seem to really support him. They seem to regularly support violence as a means to social change. You had the Thomas Cook assassination attempt against Trump. I think it was probably a little over a year ago now. So as I look at that party, it just seems like it's veering more and more towards becoming like an actual terrorist organization in many ways, which is funny because that's what they tried to hammer in as the conservatives being, is this big threat to the country. White supremacy was this great threat, and it turns out that radical Democrats are actually the threat. So I don't know. There's another story on here I wanted to discuss. Let me see if I can kind of find it. There's Nate Diaz. There's some cool UFC stuff from the weekend. This is Mikey Musumeci talking about, if you watched the UFC fight with Khamzat, he kept doing this thing where he was getting DDP in this, it's called a crucible, where you basically pin both of their arms on opposite sides of their body, so they can't do much. But what people are criticizing Khamzat for is he didn't really do much from that position. He seemed to just try to hold the position and not actually try to finish, or I guess didn't know how to finish DDP from there. He seemed like he was just trying to not let him up. So Mikey here, who's, if you don't know, he's a crazy jiu-jitsu expert. He's showing how he thinks Khamzat could have submitted him really early in that fight from the crucible position. He has a really cool little demo here.
Over, I throw my leg over his head, and when I throw my leg over his head, look at my knee pit. I try to get it as deep as I can to his neck. Now I put my head down, and my right knee, that's under his shoulder, can now lock a tight, super tight triangle here, and I squeeze, and I get the top. So again, he's here in this side control crucifix. I just get my knee a little lower. I'm here. Imagine there were strikes here. It even makes it easier to do because he has to cover up his neck. So it's even easier in MMA to do this position because he has to worry about strikes, right? But put your head down for jiu-jitsu people. I feed my head under. Regardless if his head is up or down, I can get this over back grip. Now all I do is I bring my right knee under more. I throw my leg over, feeding my knee pit as deep as I can on his neck. My right knee is already wedged under his shoulder. I can lock the triangle here, and I just bring my hips down and finish a super tight triangle. Hey guys, so this is...
Os indeed. I mean, I guess that would have worked. I assume that Khamzat Was unaware of that move. Mikey knows a bunch of weird, crazy stuff like that he'll bust out that like no one else does. So, but it's interesting because he got that crucible like 5 times, something like that. So, I guess if he would just do that, that fight would have been over pretty quickly. It's an interesting take from Mikey, and then you have Merab showing off his bag work ahead of going up against Corey Sandhagen. Merab needs to stick to wrestling. I'm going to say it here first. He should definitely not attempt to strike with Corey Sandhagen. I'm a huge Sandhagen fan. I've watched his striking videos and everything. This looks cool and all, but give it about 30 seconds of Corey blocking all that shit and then switching stances like 8 times, and he's going to be done with this. Merab's going to be moving back to the wrestling. So his best shot, in my opinion, is just to stick with the wrestling, kind of like Khamzat did. We'll see what he actually does when he gets in there, but I don't know, that was interesting. And what am I looking for? The Apple LLMs thing. Yeah, LLM. So there was just this tweet, laying on the blockchain. I don't know who the hell that is. He says, not going to lie, I'm the biggest Apple hater for very good reasons, but their last research paper explaining why they weren't interested in pursuing LLMs seems more and more like it's going to be correct. Blah, blah, blah. And I did look at this paper a little bit. I mean, I won't bore you with going into the paper, but I think that the crux of the argument was Apple basically decided against investing in large language models like ChatGPT or Grok or things like that because they did their research and they found, let me turn this thing off. They found that essentially, even though it looks like it's reasoning, it actually is not thinking, cannot reason. So their thinking is that these models are going to have a ceiling that you get to, at which point they are not going to be useful. And that's actually always been my take on LLMs. You know, everyone's always like, oh, they're so smart, and when's AGI going to happen? That's artificial general intelligence. When's that going to happen? In other words, when are these AIs going to reach human level reasoning and intelligence from these large language models? And I've always looked at those things and been like, never. Because they don't seem to be actually thinking to me. They seem to be just kind of taking all of human words and averaging them. And it seems like it's able to somehow average it in a way that makes sense to people. I think the biggest thing it tells you is like, it's not that intelligence is easy to create. It's that human beings can easily mistake intelligence. In other words, it's almost like when people, you know, when they see like some piece of art hanging in a museum and they put their own interpretation on it, right? Like you can look at any poem, you can look at any piece of art, and you can find meaning where none exists. Or you can superimpose meaning onto things where maybe it wasn't the artist's original intent. And you just go, well, it's art, and I interpreted it that way, right? I think that's sort of the same things that are happening with these LLMs. Is I don't think they're actually reasoning or actually smart. But I think that humans, just seeing those words in a certain order, interpret it as being intelligent and interpret that as being correct or being smart. And of course you see the LLMs when you go to use them, half of the time they just completely make shit up, right? Which would tell you right out of the gate, switching up the lighting here just to see how it looks. Maybe a little softer lighting, yeah, which would tell you right out of the gate that they're not reasoning, they're not intelligent, but for some reason people want to believe it, and they want to believe that these things are smart and are going to save us. So anyways, I never thought that the LLMs would be smart or were reasoning or thinking. I'm probably a little biased since I'm a writer and stuff. I try to get them to write jokes too, and they suck. They're terrible. Song lyrics, jokes, just awful. Mine weren't that great tonight either, frankly, but okay. The trauma release exercises. I have these little show notes. They're kind of fun. This will theoretically get better, by the way. Hey, what's up, Goose Chuck? So, you guys, somebody commented on my video. That's sweet. What's up? I don't know how to like read this at the same time, but anyways, that's what I'm thinking though. He said, just makes a synopsis of all the online information on whatever you prompt, which is true. It's sort of the same thing with art when you go to have it make like a new image. It's not doing anything groundbreaking. It's just basically plagiarizing all of human history and like creating an average, you know? Okay, so how do I get back here? Give me one sec. This was also on Twitter. There was like a couple people talking about these trauma release exercises. Have you guys heard of this? I guess they're like this. I've heard of them before, actually. I've never really done them. But anyways, this guy says, person I know has been described as skittish since forever. She did trauma release exercises. Basically, you tire your inner thighs with exercises like the one below, and it starts to shake. And now it's just not anymore. Like, in other words, her anxiety is gone. So what the deal is with these is you're supposed to basically lay on your back and you kind of, let me not knock this light over. You basically, you let your, I don't know how to do that. Everything's backwards on the way my camera is. But anyways, you let your legs kind of fold apart with your knees bent. And you leave them in that position with like your feet on the floor, your knees bent, and your legs apart. And as you start to sit there, your legs will start to shake. I did try them one time, and they're kind of like really weird where there is a really strong tremor in your legs as it's happening. And the idea is that these are somehow like, basically if you have a bunch of pent up adrenaline in your muscles and stuff like that, it's going to somehow release it, work it through your system, you know? But my question is, isn't this just exercise? Is there some significant difference between this and like going for a run? Because I don't know, I haven't done them before, so I've never actually like seen for myself like, yeah, it's crazy, way better than a run. But I use exercise like all the time for anxiety. Like I go for runs. I do, if I'm feeling like really anxious before a stand-up comedy performance, I'll go do like a leg strengthening workout, like just tire myself out. So is that significantly different than these trauma release things, or is it basically the same thing? I don't know. That'd be my question. Maybe I'll try them next time and see if they, I'll report back or something. Just a couple other things. You had the male cheerleader on the Minnesota Vikings. I personally don't think this is a big deal. I am for not being woke. I'm very anti-woke. And, you know, if it were like, if it were like a new LGBTQ trans cheerleading squad, I might be like up in arms about it, you know? But as far as I can remember, there's always been dudes on the cheerleading team. Everyone's always had in high school, there was the one or two dudes on the cheerleading team. It's usually a gay guy. Nothing wrong with that. It's fine. And they're kind of fun. You know, they run around, they bring good energy, and they hold all the hot chicks up. So I got no problem with that. So I don't know why everyone's freaking out about that, except they're probably just used to freaking out about anything at the moment that's woke, which I understand. Last thing I'll probably end on, Goose says the average person has lost common sense, so AI seems like a genius. Probably true. I actually think like another funny point is like, you know, we're looking for when artificial general intelligence is going to happen in AI. It's already started making shit up. It's already started lying, right? To me, that's the most human thing it can possibly do. Like it might already be there if it's already learned to lie. Last thing is kind of a weird one. I don't know if I want to even really get into this right now, but just Alex Jones, his, and I don't know, whoa, he must have been in the news recently for something, but it was just my thoughts on his, you know, he had that big lawsuit against him for the Sandy Hook kids, I guess it was, which was like, I guess all of the parents of the Sandy Hook children came out and sued him because he had pushed some conspiracy theory on his show that didn't really happen. They said there were damages from it and everything. And that's just something that's always, I don't like that he did that, right? And I don't think it was right. I don't think it was class. I thought it was classless to do something like that. But I feel like it falls under free speech, and I'm not clear on how they were able to sue him for that. Does anybody feel that way? I mean, because what he basically did was he denied that it happened, and he was saying that it was a conspiracy theory that it even happened. So, but does that mean that if somebody is a Holocaust denier, now somebody could sue them for damages and say, well, they're saying it didn't happen and it clearly did, so this has in some way damaged me, and now I can sue them for billions of dollars? And again, I'm not a Holocaust denier either. I know there are a few people I see online who do that and say that, and I would support their right to say things like that. But, you know, I'd support their right. I don't agree with it, as bad as I think it might be to say anything like that. I'm shocked that he was sued and allowed to be sued for that reason. It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I'm guessing it was just basically a collusion amongst the left to take out a conservative voice, but I don't know. It just sets a really weird precedent. Is there prior precedent for that? It seems like a crazy case. So I think there was something with his assets being seized. That's why I was thinking about it. But in any case, I think that's it for the first show. Testing stuff out. So I'm going to try and do one of these like every night, hopefully. Maybe around the same time, might be later, might be earlier. I'll kind of figure it out and post the times on YouTube. We'll figure out the camera and the stuff like that as we go along. But going to be a lot of testing at first to see how different stuff works. So if you have any suggestions too, just feel free to let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe or whatever you're supposed to do here. And then I'll figure out how to shut this off. So thanks for joining.